She didn't just break the chair, she obliterated it, and the cafe's fragile peace with it. Karen's scream, "You can't make me leave," still echoed in the stunned silence. It was a Tuesday morning at Brood Awakening, a cozy cafe in downtown Boise, Idaho, where the smell of roasted coffee beans usually calmed even the most frazzled nerves. But not today. Karen, 52, a regular with a penchant for loud phone calls and lingering for hours, had been politely asked to leave after refusing to lower her voice during a heated FaceTime argument. The manager, Tom, a 42-year-old former teacher with a knack for de-escalation, had approached her with the caution of a man stepping into a lion's cage. "Ma'am, we've had complaints," he'd said, voice steady but firm. "Please lower your volume or step outside." Karen's eyes narrowed, her face reddening like a kettle about to boil over. "Do you know who I am?" she spat, slamming her phone down. The cafe's patrons, locals sipping lattes, a few remote workers tapping at laptops, froze, sensing the storm brewing. Tom, used to entitled outbursts, held his ground. "I'm just asking you to respect the space," he said, gesturing to the door. That was the spark. Karen stood, her chair scraping loudly, and in a flash, she grabbed the $400 artisanal oak chair she'd been sitting on, hoisting it above her head like a warrior brandishing a club. Gas rippled through the crowd. "You want me out? I'll show you out," she roared, and with a primal yell, she smashed the chair against the counter, splintering it into jagged pieces. The cafe erupted into chaos. A barista dropped a tray of mugs, ceramic shards skittering across the floor. Patrons scrambled, some filming, others shouting for Karen to stop. Tom ducked just in time, the edge of the chair missing his shoulder by inches. "Karen, calm down," he yelled, but she was already grabbing another piece of the wreckage, her eyes wild with fury. This wasn't just about the request to leave. It was personal now, a battle of pride, a stand against being told what to do. Karen, a divorced real estate agent who prided herself on never backing down, saw Tom's calm authority as a direct challenge to her identity. The cafe, once a haven, was now her arena. The tension had been building for weeks. Karen had a reputation at Brood Awakening. She'd argue with baristas over foam ratios, demand free refills, and once berated a teenager for taking her table. Tom, who'd taken the manager job after burning out in education, had dealt with her before, always with patience. But today, he'd hit his limit. The cafe was his sanctuary, a place where he'd rebuilt his life after a messy divorce of his own. Karen's defiance wasn't just a disruption. It was an attack on the fragile order he'd created. As she stood there, brandishing a chair leg like a scepter, Tom felt something snap inside him too. He wasn't just defending the cafe, he was defending his dignity. The standoff escalated as Karen advanced, her voice a venomous hiss. "You think you can humiliate me? I spend hundreds here." She swung the chair leg, narrowly missing a glass display case filled with pastries. Tom, heart pounding, stepped forward, hands raised but eyes blazing. "Put it down, Karen, or I'm calling the police." The threat only fueled her. "Go ahead, call them. Let's see who's embarrassed," then she taunted, tossing her hair back. The patrons were now a divided crowd, some egging her on, others pleading for peace. A young barista, Mia, barely 20, hovered behind the counter, clutching her phone, torn between filming for evidence and calling 911. This was the high water mark of the clash, the moment where everything hung in the balance. Karen's rage was a force of nature, but Tom's resolve was a quiet steel. The cafe, with its overturned tables and shattered cups, was a battlefield of egos. On one side, Karen, fueled by a lifetime of perceived slights, saw this as her moment to reclaim power. On the other, Tom, who'd spent years swallowing his pride, was done bending. The handwritten signboard, propped against a table, caught the light Karen's rage, a $400 chair's end. It was almost prophetic, a snapshot of a woman unraveling and a man pushed to his edge. Tom's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Enough, he bellowed, surprising even himself with the force of it. Karen froze, the chair leg still raised, her bravado flickering. The crowd hushed, sensing a shift. Tom, who'd always been the peacemaker, was done playing nice. He stepped closer, his 6-foot frame towering over Karen's 5'4" defiance. "You're not just breaking a chair," he said, voice low but searing. "You're breaking everything this place stands for." His words hit harder than any physical blow, and for a split second, Karen's eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Mia, the barista, seized the moment. She darted from behind the counter, phone in hand, and hit record. "This is going viral," she whispered to a coworker, her hands shaking but her resolve firm. Mia had been saving for college, working double shifts to afford tuition, and Karen's tantrums had always grated on her. This wasn't just about a chair. It was about respect, something Mia rarely got from customers like Karen. Her video captured the scene in stark detail. Karen's wild eyes, Tom's clenched jaw, the wreckage of the cafe. Within minutes, it was uploaded to X, captioned "Karen versus Manager $400 chair casualty." The tide began to turn. Patrons, emboldened by Tom's stand, started to speak up. "Lady, you're out of line," shouted an older man in a flannel shirt, a regular who'd always tipped generously. A woman with a stroller chimed in. "This is a coffee shop, not a wrestling ring." Karen's confidence wavered as the crowd's murmurs grew into a chorus of disapproval. She'd expected allies, maybe applause for her stand, but instead, she faced a wall of judgment. Tom, sensing the shift, pressed his advantage. "You can leave now, or the police will escort you out," he said, pulling out his phone to dial 911. Karen's grip on the chair leg tightened, but her posture sagged. The reality was sinking in. She wasn't the hero of this story. Still, she couldn't back down, not yet. "You'll regret this," she hissed, dropping the chair leg with a clatter. She grabbed her purse, shoving past a table and sending a coffee cup crashing to the floor. The crowd parted as she stormed toward the door, but not before turning for one last jab. "This place is a dump anyway," she shouted, her voice cracking. The door slammed behind her, the bell above it jingling mockingly. Tom exhaled, his shoulders slumping. The cafe was a mess, broken furniture, spilled drinks, and a stunned silence. But there was something else in the air, a sense of victory, fragile but real. Mia's video was already racking up views on X, with comments flooding in. "Manager's a legend, Karen needs help." The patrons began to clap, a slow, hesitant applause that grew louder. Tom waved it off, embarrassed but relieved. He'd stood his ground, and for the first time in years, he felt like he'd won something bigger than a coffee shop brawl. The cafe's air hung heavy with the aftermath of Karen's exit, but the battle wasn't over. Tom's victory felt hollow as he surveyed the wreckage, a $400 chair in splinters, tables askew, and coffee pooling on the hardwood floor. His hands trembled as he set his phone down, the 911 call unneeded, but the adrenaline still coursing. Mia, the barista, was already sweeping up ceramic shards, her phone buzzing with notifications as her ex-post gained traction. "This is insane," she muttered, glancing at Tom. "You okay, boss?" He nodded, but his jaw was tight. Karen's outburst had cracked something deeper than furniture. It had exposed the fragility of the community he'd built. Outside, Karen hadn't gone far. She stood on the sidewalk, pacing, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. Passers-by stared, some recognizing her from the commotion. She clutched her purse, muttering to herself, replaying the scene in her head. To her, this wasn't just a loss, it was betrayal. Brood Awakening had been her refuge, a place to escape the loneliness of her empty house, her failed marriage, her dwindling client list. Being asked to leave felt like being exiled from the last place she felt seen. She pulled out her phone, fingers shaking, and started typing a scathing review discriminated against by an arrogant manager. Avoid this dump, but as she hit post, doubt crept in. Had she gone too far inside? Tom rallied the team. "Let's clean this up," he said, voice steadying. The patrons, still reeling, pitched in some writing tables, others offering to pay for the damage. The older man in flannel, whose name was Carl, clapped Tom on the shoulder. "You handled that like a pro," he said. "My daughter's dealt with Karens in retail. They're a plague." Tom managed a weak smile, but his mind was racing. He'd stood up to Karen, but at what cost? The chair's price tag stung a week's worth of revenue, and the cafe's reputation was now at the mercy of social media. Mia's video, nearing 10,000 views, was a double-edged sword. It painted Tom as a hero, but risked turning the cafe into a spectacle. As the cleanup continued, Mia approached Tom, holding her phone. "You need to see this," she said. The X post had sparked a firestorm. Comments ranged from supportive manager deserves a medal to vicious Karen's a menace. Lock her up. But a few took Karen's side, calling Tom's response aggressive and unprofessional. One user, Idaho Mom 4, wrote, "She's a customer, not a criminal. Shame on this cafe." Tom's stomach sank. He'd wanted to protect his space, not start a war. But the internet didn't care about nuance, it thrived on division. The counterattack wasn't just digital. Karen, emboldened by her own narrative, returned to the cafe's entrance, this time with a friend in tow, a woman named Linda, another regular with a sharp tongue. They stood outside, filming through the window, narrating loudly for their audience. "This is where they humiliate paying customers," Karen declared, her voice carrying into the cafe. Linda chimed in, "Boycott this place." A small crowd gathered, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Tom, wiping down the counter, caught sight of them and felt the weight of their stares. This wasn't over. Mia, ever quick on her feet, had an idea. "Let's fight fire with fire," she said, pulling Tom aside. She drafted a post from the cafe's official X account today. "We stood up for our staff and customers against disruptive behavior. Brood Awakening is about community, not chaos. Support us by sharing your positive stories." She hit post, and within minutes, regulars chimed in with photos of their favorite drinks, stories of first dates at the cafe, even a post from Carl about Tom's legendary patience. The tide was shifting again, but Karen wasn't done. By noon, the cafe was back in order, but the tension lingered. Karen and Linda had retreated to a nearby park, plotting their next move. Karen's review had garnered some sympathy online, with a few locals vowing to stand with her. She felt a flicker of vindication, but it was fleeting. Deep down, she knew the chair incident had crossed a line. Her anger, once a shield, now felt like a cage. She'd wanted respect, but all she'd earned was infamy. Her phone buzzed with a text from her ex-husband. Saw the video. "You okay?" The question stung more than any insult. Inside, Tom faced a reckoning of his own. The cafe was bustling again, but the cost of the morning's chaos was steep. The chair's replacement would eat into his budget, and the online backlash, though fading, had left a mark. He wondered if he'd been too harsh, too quick to escalate. Maybe he could have talked Karen down, found a way to diffuse her rage, but as he watched Mia laugh with a customer, he knew he'd made the right call. This place wasn't just his, it belonged to the staff, the regulars, the community that showed up every day. He wouldn't let one person's outburst tear it apart. The turning point came that afternoon. A local news outlet picked up the story, framing it as cafe chaos, manager versus customer showdown. The reporter, a young woman named Sarah, arrived to interview Tom. She was fair, asking tough questions. "Did you provoke her? Could you have handled it differently?" Tom answered honestly, his voice raw. "I just wanted to protect my team." He said, "This is our home." Sarah also tracked down Karen, who agreed to speak, on camera. Karen's defiance crumbled. "I felt attacked," she admitted, her voice breaking. I just, uh, I didn't mean for it to go that far. For the first time, she saw herself through others' eyes, a woman unraveling, not a warrior. The news segment aired that evening, and it changed everything. The cafe's ex-post went viral, with thousands sharing stories of kindness at Brood Awakening. A GoFundMe started by Carl raised enough to replace the chair and more. Karen, meanwhile, faced a different fate. Her real estate clients began canceling, citing unprofessional behavior. Her friends distanced themselves, embarrassed by the spectacle. Alone in her apartment, she watched the news clip, tears streaming as she saw her own rage reflected back. The chair wasn't the only thing she'd broken. She'd shattered her own reputation. Tom, too, felt the weight of the day. As he locked up the cafe, Mia handed him a new wooden signboard, chalked with the words Karen's Rage, a $400 chair's end. She grinned, thought we'd keep it as a trophy. Tom laughed, the first real laugh all day. The cafe had survived, stronger for it, but the victory was bittersweet. He'd won the battle, but the war against chaos, entitlement, and division was far from over. Karen's story didn't end with redemption. She moved to a new town, chasing a fresh start, but the internet's memory was long. Tom, meanwhile, became a quiet hero, his cafe a symbol of resilience. The signboard stayed, a reminder that community could triumph over conflict, but only at a cost.